Hello, everybody, and welcome to TOEFL Masterclass, Advanced Strategies for High Scores. And today we are with the very talented Josh MacPherson. He is the owner of two very successful TOEFL schools. One is TST Prep TOEFL Solutions for Open Minds, as well as TOEFL Speaking Teacher. He is also very famous for his YouTube videos about the TOEFL, and he's also known as Vocabulary Ninja. TOEFL, amazing resume here.
Yeah,
so Josh,
yeah,
we are so
wow,
excited.
wow,
We're so excited for you. How are you today?
thank you. It's quite an introduction. Thank you. I appreciate it. I feel like that was like my resume, pretty much, my online resume right there. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Josh, you are a superstar. We have to acknowledge this.
yeah. Not really. You mentioned two sites that I started before, so Vocabulary Ninja and TOEFL Speaking Teacher, and actually, both those sites don't exist anymore. Actually, believe it or not, and that's because like we do just TST prep only. So a lot of the stuff from Vocabulary Ninja and TOEFL Speaking Teacher, I just kind of moved to TST prep, and so kind of brought everything together there. So I've been doing the TOEFL for like 5 years now, about. So it's been a lot of work, really. So yeah. Yeah. Thank you for calling me a superstar. I've never been called that before. It's very nice. Thank you.
You are.
Yeah, right.
So, Josh, you've been doing this for so long, and a lot of people, we know students want to run away from the TOEFL, but a lot of teachers want to run away from the TOEFL as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to ask you, why do you like teaching the TOEFL? Why have you taught the TOEFL for so long?
Good. I well, I got into it because I was teaching at an international school in New York, and there was a TOEFL program where there are students who had something called an I-20 visa in America, which it's a student visa, and they have to be in class for 20 hours a week. A lot of them take English classes. Some of them we had a TOEFL program. So I was teaching the TOEFL program just out of necessity, really. We didn't have anybody who wanted to teach it. And so I was TOEFL about 20 hours a week, every week, for a couple years. And so I had to make curriculum for a lot of hours of material for students, and then I just kind of got into it. And so that was the kind of start. And then I also just liked the idea of students getting a score. Like they kind of get something at the end. They can measure their progress in some way. When you learn a language, you kind of it's hard to measure your progress, especially when you get to a more advanced level. You kind of feel like you're stuck at an advanced level. And so I like the idea of trying to get somebody's score up. There is some measurement that kind of would be some type of proof that you improved or that you're, fluent or whatever. So I liked the measurable aspect of it. So, because teaching language, you could teach it forever. It never stops, never ends. There's always new questions, always new vocabulary. And so TOEFL feels like something that could be, and so for some people, an end in some way. And I just liked that idea. And so that's why. Yeah,
Fantastic. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about the name of your school, actually, Solutions for Open Minds. And why did you choose that? I love that open minds part, and I'm wondering why you chose that.
Well, it was something like, in my experience, students who do well put a lot of effort into trying to improve, and they're willing to experiment, willing to try new things, willing to kind of see what works for them and what doesn't. And TOEFL is not fun. It's not It could be. I know you try to put a nice kind of spin on it to try to make it a little more fun and interesting and engaging.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, for the most part, it's a test and it's test preparation. And so, with that in mind, most people, and myself included, they just want their score and move on. Like they just want to get their score and just go to the next thing, whatever it is. And so, but the problem with that is that most people who get the score, so some people get the score very easily and it's no problem, but for people who struggle, if they want to improve and get the score that they want, then they have to kind of experiment and try new things and put a lot of effort in. And so that's why the open minds kind of just came into my mind. Now, people don't want to hear like hard work, or like, do a lot of practice. It's so open mind sounds a little nicer too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
Um, and as we know, TOEFL is always shifting and changing, to be teaching the TOEFL as long as you have, and to see the ebb and flow and different things that TOEFL offers. And now the most recent TOEFL offering seems to be the TOEFL test at home, where we can actually sit in our living room, in our kitchen, wherever we are, and actually take the TOEFL at home. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts or advice for students, kind of the good and the bad of taking the TOEFL at home, and kind of what's going on right now in the TOEFL world with that.
Yeah, so I mean, right now we're meeting on March 24th, and it's kind of crazy in the world right now with COVID, the pandemic, and currently in America, people are on lockdown and they can't leave their houses, and so of course they can't go to the test centers. And this has been going on for almost 6 months, maybe more, since it started in Wuhan in China. And so there's a lot of problems for people, but I mean, in the TOEFL world, at least, people can't go to take the test. So, like 3 days ago, ETS announced that they're going to do an at-home version. I'm going to meet with some people from ETS later and maybe have an interview on YouTube with them, and they could shed some more light on this because I don't even really know a lot. But what I do know is that basically you're taking it at home, and it's a software that you put on your computer, and it's basically exactly like the TOEFL except you're taking it at home. And they have a proctor who's watching you on camera, like the web camera I have now, and the person watches you to make sure you don't cheat. And that's kind of the big, I guess, challenge for ETS, is that people taking it at home, how do they make sure that people don't cheat? So you have to do all these security measures, similar to when you go to the test center. Like you have to show your whole room. You have to move your computer around, show your whole room. You have to have a phone or a mirror behind you that can show the computer screen so they can see like what your computer screen like. So there's all these measures. I think it's going to be kind of hard to administer. um, I don't think it's going to last after this situation. It could, but I don't think so. I know the price is the same, the test is the same. It's just at your house. With the benefits of it for people, I guess, some students are kind of, that I've talked to, are kind of excited about it because they hate going to a test center. They hate going to the test center, talking when other people are talking. It's noisy, it's annoying. And then I talked to another student who wants to wait because he likes to listen to other people talk during the speaking section, and it gives him ideas of what to say. So, like, so it really depends on the student. But I think for some, for in terms of stress, and in terms of comfort, I think it's a bit more comfortable and a bit less stressful to take it at home. But everybody's different, so it's really up to the person. But if this test center does make you feel really stressed, this is a pretty good opportunity to kind of go around that. So it is an opportunity for some people.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure.
What do you think is the number one thing a student should know about the TOEFL test?
Ooh, what's the number one thing students should know? um I don't know. I don't know. It depends on the person. Well, I guess okay. So one thing I guess that's good to know is that the test is designed to see if you're ready for university in the States. And so, but a lot of people take the test for different reasons. Actually, a lot of people I talk to, they take the test to be a licensed pharmacist or a dentist or physical therapist, or so a lot of people take it to go to school, but not everybody. And so, because of that, you, the test is the kind of stuff that you would see or experience in your first year of school. So this could be difficult if you don't know about like some campus vocabulary, like dormitory or elective or undergraduate. You know, like these are words that are specifically for university that come up in the listening section, sometimes in the speaking section as well, and that could be challenging. And then also the vocabulary you see in the reading and listening and I guess all the sections is academic, a lot of it. And so it's not words you would be used to hearing if you just watch the news or, study textbooks. So I would say that I guess the most important thing is that the test is designed for university. And so because of that, there's some elements you should know.
Mhm. Yeah, great point. I know I spent a lot of time on those different vocabulary words. What's GPA mean? You know,
Right,
what's
right. Yeah.
why are they taking classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays? I don't get it. All these campus conversations that these students are having.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, about the Tuesday and Thursday. I never thought about that one before. Yeah, there are these weird, there are these weird cultural things that we take for granted that people just don't know. Like I have students from Asia that they don't know a lot about European history, and then sometimes there'll be questions that you need some background information to be able to know the people, the places, the context, and can't really, it's hard to teach that stuff. You can't really teach it really. It's kind of either you know it or you don't. And yeah, it's kind of, there's some elements of it that's not really fair to everybody. It's hard to be fair to everybody when it's an international test and so many different types of people take it. But yeah, there is some background knowledge that we kind of take for granted.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you're studying the language, you are really studying a culture as well.
Right.
So can be a challenge. What would you say of all the students that you've worked with, just maybe one success story that really stands out for you? I think it's really helpful for that person, that student who maybe is first starting their TOEFL studies and they're so overwhelmed, they're
Sure.
so, anxious and stressed out, like, how am I ever going to pass this test? And I really love to share those success stories and let people know that they can absolutely get to their goal. You might have to be persistent about it, but you can get there. Do you have a student who has one of those really great success stories about the TOEFL?
Yeah. I mean, for me, a good success story is one that's grounded in failure. Like, I think it's important for people to know that, not getting your score and not getting what you want is okay. Like, I mean, it's not what you planned, and it's messes up your life. But it's not the end. It doesn't have to be the end. Um, because like, I mean, so for example, if uh, taking the test and struggling with it can be pretty lonely, because you hear a lot of people who take the test, oh, I studied for 2 days and I got 110, and they don't even try, and they get a really high score. So it's really hard for a lot of people because you're constantly comparing yourself to others. But the story that I was thinking of is a student named Ming. He was a kind of like a middle-aged pharmacist, originally from China, living in the American South, and he had taken the test more than 30 times.
Hmm.
So like he never told me an exact number, but he knew the number, but he never told me the exact number. But he had it was like a hobby almost, like it turned into a hobby. And of course he didn't want that to be the case. He planned on taking the test and not having a problem. That would be it. He started just taking the test a lot because he figured one day he would just get his score, which was a speaking 26 he needed eventually. And so he kept taking the test and didn't improve, and then he took classes, and he took classes for quite a while. It wasn't like, it's this quick turnaround. He took classes with us, and then 3 months later he got his test. No, it was like 9 months. We were working together, giving practice activities every day. He took the test, didn't get a score, but he kept going. um, a lot of students, they'll take classes for a month and not get their score, and then feel like they're not going to do it and quit. Which is natural. I really understand. You don't want to spend your whole life taking the TOEFL, but he took it. He did it a lot for 9 months, and then he got like a 28 on speaking one day. That was just way higher than anything he had experienced or expected, and it was great. I was very happy for him. He'd been working with us for a while, so yeah, I just think of him because he really didn't stop. He just didn't stop. He was just like, I'm going to do it. This just it, no matter what. So that was the kind of experience that I remember most. Yeah.
That's awesome. That story actually inspired me because I've been feeling like I need to quit something these days, but because of Ming, I'm just going to keep going. It's really,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We
There's
have
some
some
people.
amazing students.
Yeah, you kind of have to. I mean, it wasn't too bad for him because he felt like that he was improving his life. He was improving his accent in some way. People were understanding him more at work. So he saw a lot of benefits besides just the score. Of course, it also helped him get a raise in pay at work. But yeah, I think that's the kind of trick, if there could be a trick. Like, it's not really like trying to prepare for a test, but prepare for life in some way. And if you can see some long-term benefit, that's not just your work, but also your communication with people, your lifestyle, your experience with other people. Like, if you can tap into different emotions and motivations, then I think that could really sustain you long term.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And Josh, just tell us what you currently offer TOEFL students.
Sure. So tscprep.com is our site, and so we have, it's not just me, but a bunch of other teachers, 4 other teachers, and we basically do private lessons and speaking classes and writing classes, all that kind of stuff. We do group classes, private lessons. We also have a lot of practice activities, practice tests. Everything's kind of made by us, so things that you won't find in other books. So it's all our material. I do my YouTube channel, which you mentioned, and yeah, so pretty much, and our big flagship course right now is the TOEFL emergency course. We have different levels of packages for students. It's a course, and also you get practice tests, you get practice questions, videos, all that stuff. So that's the big thing, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And for our webinar here, tell us a little bit about the lesson that you have prepared for us.
Oh yeah. So the lesson is about TOEFL reading vocabulary. Very exciting. Vocabulary is a kind of issue. I know you talk about it quite a bit, and everybody does, really, because it's so important. Uh, if you don't understand what you're reading, it's going to be really hard to answer the question, no matter how much strategy you have, or how many books you read. If you don't understand it, it's going to be hard to answer. So talking about in this lesson, kind of different strategies to figure out the meaning of a word based on the context. And also, besides the TOEFL itself, also some ways to improve your reading outside of class and to study vocabulary outside of class. If you're anything like me, like I learn a vocabulary word in another language and I forget it very quickly, I have to review it a lot. So give some ideas for how to do that as well. So by the end, hopefully students know how to read better for the TOEFL, in the TOEFL, how to improve their vocabulary outside of class, and how to remember their words better.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So coming up next is Josh's lesson. Josh, thank you so much for joining. I had so much fun in this interview. And yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Kirsten. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
of course, you're so welcome.
What's going on, guys? I'm excited to be here. We're going to talk about how to improve your vocabulary. There's going to be so much information that's going to be packed into this short little presentation. Not sure how long it's going to take. I'll try to keep it as short as possible, but a lot of great things you're going to learn by the end of this. Just to give you 4 quick things. We're going to identify your current vocabulary level. You're going to be able to discover 3 easy ways to improve your vocabulary. You're going to find useful websites to help your memory. And you're going to be able to distinguish between vocabulary that you need and vocabulary that you can ignore. So there's thousands of words in the English language, hard to know what's important. So we're going to talk about that together now. And just really quick introduction, my name is Josh MacPherson. I am the head instructor of tstprep.com, where our mission is simple: to help you get the TOEFL score you need as quickly and easily as possible. Just a little bit about my background. I have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction for ESL. I have over 5 years TOEFL teaching experience, 10 years teaching ESL, so you're in good hands. And TST Prep, we have the TOEFL emergency course, which we have designed, again, to help you get your TOEFL score quickly and easily. 5 hours, that's all it is. Practice tests, practice questions, all that good stuff. Everything that you need to know. You could spend your time reading through a 600-page book or go through the emergency course. So, promoting that today, and check it out, tstprep.com. So, let's get into the lesson, how to improve your vocabulary. First thing I want to talk about is actually just give you a question. At your current level, when you're reading something in English, how much do you think you should understand? Should you understand 70%, 90%, or 98%? Which level is a good level? Think about it for a minute. Okay. Now, when I go, well, let's go into it. Let me show you some examples. So here's a reading text from one of our short little TOEFL reading passages, and this is what 70% looks like. If you couldn't understand 30% of the vocabulary, this is how much vocabulary you wouldn't understand. Now try to read that. Pathogen-borne and both viral and in nature have and continue, worth noting that all pathogenic, it's really hard to understand. Now let's look at 90%. It's a little bit better, still difficult. Pathogen-borne blank and place, both viral and blank in nature, so I'm missing a lot of important information. Let's look at 98% or 95%. There's 5 words missing. So this is approximately 100 words, this reading passage, and so you wouldn't understand 5 words if you understood 95%. So my point here is that you should be reading text that you understand over 95% of the vocabulary. Some of you are reading TOEFL text where you don't understand a lot of it. So again, our goal is for you to improve your vocabulary. If you don't understand 30% of the vocabulary, it's too difficult. You need to start reading things that are easy and fun, where you understand most of it, and there's only a couple of words that you don't understand. If you think about it, when you're in an English class, you probably only do about 10 vocabulary words per lesson, maybe even less. If you don't understand 30% of a 100-word passage, you're studying 30 words, right? That's a lot of words to study. It's too difficult. So this is the first thing, is that maybe TOEFL is a bit too difficult for you to improve your vocabulary. Pro tip number 1, reading a lot of easy and enjoyable text is one of the best ways to improve your vocabulary. So this is the bad news, so to speak, is that the best way to improve your vocabulary is to read a lot. It's not a very secret, cool answer. It's just, you gotta read a lot. You can read a lot of easy and fun things, even things that are not necessarily for the TOEFL, because it's gonna be enjoyable for you. When you actually enjoy what you're reading, you wanna read more. And the other reason why this is great is because you're reading text in a story. Things become much more memorable when it's a story. When it's something that you can connect with and you can follow the progression, it's much better for your memory than just downloading a list and looking through the list. I'm sure you have experience of downloading vocabulary lists, and they probably haven't helped too much. I'm going to share some vocabulary lists, but the best way to improve your vocabulary is to read vocabulary in context, to read it there. And you want to read easy, fun things because then you'll want to read more and more. So there's different types of practice here, so I want you to try to balance your vocabulary practice with intensive and extensive. So of course you still want to study TOEFL, totally understandable. So you want to do both. You want to do this intensive practice where you're really focused on getting the right answer. And then you want to do this extensive practice where you're just enjoying, relaxing, watching TV, watching a movie, listening to a podcast, reading an easy book. These are extensive practice activities. You should have these as well as your intensive practice. So you want to keep studying TOEFL, even though it's difficult vocabulary. I understand. Balance it. Do both. Do a little bit of the intensive, a little bit of the extensive, or a lot of the intensive and a lot of the extensive. It's up to you. But really when you do this really focused practice, it's hard to improve actually. Because you're trying to get the right answer, and language doesn't really work that way. Language is about communicating a message, about connecting with other people in reading and writing and listening and speaking. So stories help you see that connection better than just a test question. Okay, so balance your studies between extensive and intensive, and don't be afraid to just sit back and relax and watch some TV. It's okay, right? You want to have a balance between the two. One of the best websites to study in this style of reading passages that are fun and easy is LinkQ. Basically, they have extensive reading practice. There's a lot of different text there for you that you can read. You can add vocabulary. There's a lot of great tools on this website. They have a free version and a paid version. But if you're looking for easy, fun things to read, you don't want to buy all these books, right? You can download LinkQ, and that will give you a lot of content to practice with. This is the best way to improve your vocabulary. This is research-based. Many in the ELT community, English language teaching community, agree. Extensive reading, reading a lot of fun, easy things is one of the best ways to boost up your vocabulary. Okay, so let's go on to what ETS says about the TOEFL itself. They say here, the best way to improve reading skills is to read frequently and to read many different types of texts in various subjects. So even from ETS, they say the same thing about how to improve your vocabulary and how to improve your reading in general. Incorporate storytelling in your vocabulary study. So I'll just say this one more time. You want to have stories involved. If you can write your own stories with the vocabulary, that would be great too. All right, let's move on. Second tip is that use a flashcard app to help your memory and track your progress. So you probably know about flashcard apps already. My students that I've worked with, some of them like it, some of them don't. I have mixed feelings about flashcard apps, to be honest, but they do really help my memory because they tell me when I have to study. I don't want to study, but they tell me when to study, and then I do study them. So they do really help with timing in particular for me. But there are some other benefits too. So the one that I use a lot is Quizlet. I'm actually probably going to change this in the future because they stopped one feature about long-term learning. But Quizlet is really easy to use and engaging. I really like Quizlet, and I usually recommend it to students. And I actually use it myself. So I use it to study Japanese, and one reason I do it is because it helps with my memory. It's based on spaced repetition, so the flashcard app knows when you're about to forget the word. So your flashcard app on your phone will say, ding, 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 time to study. And then you have to study that word because your memory will probably forget it. So there's a science to memory, and you have to see things over and over and over again. And so this flashcard app does it automatically, so you don't have to think about it. Really great, really useful tool to help you improve your memory of these words and phrases. And when you're practicing these words and phrases, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can add images, audio, text, try to make a story around it. So for this example, when I say get money, okane o morau, I think, yep, okane o morau. So I put a picture of this kid. If I was listening to the audio, it would say the phrase okane o morau. And so I would be able to listen, I would see the picture. I remember the story of finding this on Google, this picture of the kid. And so That's one way to help me remember this phrase. If I just studied this in a textbook and then didn't review it, it would be much harder for me to remember. So flashcard apps are really powerful. Definitely take advantage of them to help you improve your vocabulary and help with your memory. That's where it's really going to help, is your memory. The third tip here, this one is my kind of favorite, is like kind of secret, so to speak, is narrow your focus to important vocabulary. So there are thousands of words in the English language. When you read a text, it's going to be really hard to know, should I study this word? Do I need it in the future? And if you tried to study all the words that you don't understand, your head would explode. So it wouldn't be fun. So you want to figure out what words are most important. So one great tool is first a TOEFL vocabulary list. So here's a screenshot from tstprep.com. We actually took a lot of these words, or this list, from the academic word list. So the academic word list is a list of words. It's 570 words. Sounds like a lot, but it actually isn't compared to thousands of words in the English language. 570 words that show up over and over again in academic text. Biology, history, law, science, whatever you're studying, these words come up over and over again. So let's look at a couple of examples here. For example, abstract. No matter what you're studying, that word comes up in a lot of university text, a lot of academic texts. Academy, that comes up over and over again in academic text. So you see here that these words are important for TOEFL takers because your test, the TOEFL test, is to see if you're ready to go to university. And how do you see if you're ready to go to university? Well, you have to study academic texts. So you want to know these words. Very important. And this is for anything outside of TOEFL. If you're studying English for business, then you want to focus on business English in your industry. So find vocabulary lists. They shouldn't be things that you study off of, but they should be tools that help you know, okay, this word's important, I should study it. Oh, this word's not so important, I'm going to skip that one. So you want to use that as a resource to help you know the most important vocabulary. All right, the other thing that I want you to do is word parts. Now, you probably know about word parts. You probably know them from different names. Basically, they're parts of words that give you some hint of the meaning. So let me give you an example. Submarine. Sub, S-U-B, means under, right? And marine is connected to water, so that's not a word part, but so sub means under. Or subway. Sub is under, a train that goes under. Or sub-zero, temperature that is below zero. Sub is under. So there are some word parts that are really important that show up over and over and over again. There are hundreds of word parts. So again, I want to make your life easier. I want you to just know 30 word parts. So 10 prefixes, 10 suffixes, 10 root words. Don't worry if you don't know what that means. I'm going to explain it in a second. 30 word parts that come up over and over again. So there are hundreds, and I don't want you to get too confused by all of them. I just want you to know a couple that are going to be really helpful. So if you look at this example of prefixes, these are word parts that go in the beginning of words. So for example, pre means before. Prefix is before a word. Another example is hyper. Hyperactive. We put hyper before the word active, and it means extreme. Or hyperlink. We put hyper after link, and a link is a connection. A hyperlink is a connection to the internet, so an extreme link, right? Really powerful link. That's hyper, right? That's actually not one that's so important. We're just going to focus on a few that are the most important for you. Now, why are they confusing? Because there's a lot of word parts. Pick just a few that you want to remember. Students find prefixes and suffixes most useful. Okay, so I'm going to talk about these right now. Here are the top 10 prefixes I want you to remember. And you probably know a lot of them already. And if you see them now, you're like, oh, I get it now. So you probably already know some of this information already, which is great. You want to use this information to help you guess the meaning of a word. Sometimes when you're taking the test, you don't know what the word means, and you just are struggling. You don't know what the word means. So these will help you kind of unlock the meaning. For example, if you know EX means out of, then exposure means you are out of something inside, right? When you're exposed, you're outside, people can see you. Or let's say, for example, exclusion. So you're outside of something. If you're excluded, you're not allowed inside. I'm not going to do all of these, but I'm just going to just give you a quick example of each. Pro means before or toward. Prologue is before you start talking about something. Or prognosis is what will probably happen to you in the future. Trans is through or across or beyond. Transcript is you send some writing somewhere else. Or if you transfer, you go from one train to another train or one plane to another plane. You go across to another. Sub, dis, un, auto, pre, inter, re. I'm not going to keep going through all of these. So you can see how these could help you understand the meaning of a word. Now be careful, sometimes you'll see a word that begins with RE, for example number 10, recall or rebuild means to do something again. But how about the word red? Red has nothing to do with that, right? So there are situations where these don't work. It's a tool to help you. Just in case you don't know the meaning of a word, try some of these word parts to see if they help you understand the meaning. It's not magic. It's not going to give you the meaning of a word, but it'll help you understand more than if you don't know these things. Let's look at an example for root words. So part. So part is a part. Pretty simple, right? Department. And if you go to a department store, there are a lot of departments there. There are a lot of parts. So for example, there's the perfume part. There is the clothing part. There's the men's shoes part. So that's department. Or how about graph, demographic. Dem has related to people, graph is to write. So we're writing how many about people, demographic. So you see how these word parts can help you unlock the meaning of certain words. Now you may know about word parts, there's hundreds of them and you're like, there's too many, I don't get it. We're just going to focus on 10 root words here. Part, part of divide, like I said before. DICT is to say or speak. Dictate, you tell somebody something. Or contradict, you say the opposite of what somebody said. Okay, duck is to lead. So for example, a conductor leads a train. They're the driver of a train. Gen is to produce. You probably know this, like generation is the production of a new group of people. Or what do we have here? Indigenous are people who are inside of a country at first and they are produced there. So there's more: mod, path, biosense, log, logo, graph, gram. These are all really important root words that show up in a lot of words, especially academic words. They show up again and again. So these 10 are going to be really helpful for you to guess the meaning of a word even if you don't know it. Let's look at the last part, suffixes. I'm glad you're still with me. We're almost at the end. I hope you feel like you're getting a lot out of this, that you're learning about vocabulary and about the best ways of trying to build your vocabulary and also ways to try to figure out the meaning of a word if you don't know the meaning. So let's look at this last part, suffixes. Mouth, mouthful, hope, hopeful. So these word parts that go on the end, they change words' parts of speech. They change it to an adjective or a noun or a verb or an adverb. So let's look at a couple of examples. IFY is a verb. If you identify or intensify, that makes something a verb. It causes something. Or let's say, for example, IZE, again another verb. Lionize, jeopardize. You take the word lion and then you put IZE, lionize. You make something in action. If you make somebody like a lion, they're like a very important, powerful person. Jeopardize, you take the word jeopardy, you add IZE, you change it to a verb, and then it becomes something like somebody is in jeopardy, okay, that they're in trouble. The third one, adverb, ly, you probably know this, heavily, suddenly. Any word that ends with ly is an adverb. There's more here. Able, I've, ish, ity, ness, ment, tion, making verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs. So suffixes are really help you. They give you the part of speech, and that'll help you figure out how this word is connected in this sentence and give you some ideas of the meaning of the word as well. Okay, so sum up, we just went through a lot of stuff really quickly, but read easy and enjoyable text. I gave a link to LinkQ. Use a flashcard app like Quizlet and focus on specific vocabulary. There's hundreds, thousands of words in English, and you don't want to focus too much on trying to understand everything. Just try to understand what's important. And you can always visit me, tsdprep.com, where we help you get your score as quickly and easily as possible. Check out the TOEFL emergency course. Thank you guys for staying to the end. I really appreciate it. I hope you found this helpful, and enjoy the rest of the event, guys. All right, I'll see you later.